A millionaire wed a plus-size woman on a dare, but what happened next shocked him. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to today's story about a billionaire who thought love was just a game. Until the woman he married on a dare changed everything. The rain poured over downtown Dallas, washing the streets in silver light. Inside the glass tower of Cross Industries, Ethan Cross, 32, leaned against the marble bar of a private rooftop lounge. Laughter and jazz filled the air. Around him, a circle of wealthy investors toasted to success, their cufflinks gleaming, their jokes edged with arrogance. Ethan smiled, faintly bored. "Come on, Ethan," one of them goaded, swirling a glass of whiskey. "You can win any deal, but I bet you could not last a week with an ordinary woman." "Someone real?" Another man chuckled. "Yeah. You only date models and board members. How about a real challenge? Marry someone who does not fit your perfect picture." Ethan's jaw tightened. He hated being baited. "You want a challenge," he said coolly, setting his drink down. "Fine. Tomorrow morning, I will marry the first woman who walks into the cafe across the street. And I will make it work." The men erupted in disbelief, laughter echoing against the tall windows. "We will hold you to that," Cross One shouted. Ethan only smirked, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of pride and recklessness. Outside, thunder rolled. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the cafe windows, catching the dust motes in the air. Ethan sat at a corner table, dark suit pressed, a coffee untouched before him. He was ready to prove a point. The doorbell chimed. A woman stepped in, Lena Morales, 28, carrying a box of pastries. Her curly hair was damp from the drizzle, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She wore a simple blue dress and sneakers splattered with flour. To the world, she was just a local baker delivering an order, her plus-size frame moving with quiet confidence. Ethan's gaze followed her without meaning to. She laughed softly with the barista, her warmth cutting through the sterile room like sunlight. Something in her unguarded smile disarmed him. He remembered the bet, the mocking laughter of his friends. His pride whispered, "Now or never." He rose from his seat and approached her. "Excuse me," he said, voice smooth, rehearsed. "Do you believe in crazy chances?" Lena blinked, confused. "I am sorry," Ethan extended his hand as if it were a business proposal. "Marry me." The cafe went silent. A spoon clinked against a cup. Lena stared at him speechless, then let out a short, nervous laugh. "Is this some kind of prank? Because if it is not funny." "I am serious," Ethan replied, his tone even. "I can help you with anything you need. Your bakery, your bills. In return, you help me with something I need, just for a few months." She took a step back, studying him. His suit, his watch, the calm certainty in his eyes. "You do not even know me," she said. "Maybe that is the point," he answered. For a long moment, the world outside blurred, the hum of traffic, the hiss of the espresso machine, until only their eyes met. Something about his composure told her he was not joking. Against all reason, she felt curiosity stir inside her chest. Lena shook her head, half smiling. "You must be out of your mind." Ethan's lips curved faintly. "Maybe I am. But sometimes, that is where the best stories begin." And just like that, the impossible began, a contract written in pride, signed with desperation, and sealed by fate. Lena did not say yes that day. She walked out of the cafe, shaking her head, convinced that Ethan Cross was either insane or playing some elaborate joke. But that night, as she locked up her small bakery on Elm Street, she found a sleek black car waiting outside. Ethan stepped out, rain dripping from the brim of his umbrella. "I meant what I said," he told her calmly. "I can help you. You just have to help me too." Lena crossed her arms, her apron dusted with flour. "Help you with what exactly?" "Another one of your rich man experiments." Ethan's voice softened. "My company board wants stability. They are pushing me to settle down. I need someone by my side for the next few months, someone real, not another business deal in heels." "You help me with that? I help you keep your bakery." The words hit her like thunder. Her bakery, Morales Bread, was 3 months behind on rent. Her mother's medical bills were piling up again. Every night she stayed up kneading dough until dawn just to survive. "You think you can buy my life?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "I think we can make an arrangement that saves us both." For a long moment she studied him. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at her. Not pity, not mockery, just a strange sincerity that did not fit his perfect suit. Against her better judgment, she asked, "What kind of arrangement?" He opened a leather folder and placed it on the counter. Inside was a printed contract. The first line read, "Marriage agreement. 3 months," Ethan explained. "You attend events with me. You wear the ring smile for the cameras, pretend we are happy. After that, I will transfer full ownership of this bakery to your name. No strings attached." Lena laughed in disbelief. "Read the fine print," he said quietly. "There are no tricks." She glanced down at the pages. There were rules, 5 of them. 1. Maintain privacy. 2. No romantic involvement. 3. Appear together at required functions. 4. Keep personal lives separate. 5. End the agreement without further obligation. It was all there in black and white, a business deal disguised as marriage. Lena stared at the paper, her mind spinning. The sound of the rain outside filled the silence. Finally she whispered, "You are offering me a lifeline, but you are asking me to lie." Ethan's eyes softened. "It will not be a lie if we both understand what it is." The next morning she showed the contract to her best friend Mia, who nearly dropped her coffee. "You are not seriously considering this, are you?" "I do not know," Lena murmured. "I could pay the hospital. I could keep the shop." "Lena, he is a billionaire. They do not do anything without a reason." "I know," she said quietly. "But maybe this time, the reason does not matter. Maybe I just need a chance to breathe." By the end of that week, Lena Morales stood outside a small courthouse in downtown Dallas wearing a simple cream dress that barely reached her knees. Ethan waited beside her in a tailored navy suit, unreadable behind his calm expression. A notary checked the documents, and within minutes the papers were signed. No vows, no rings, no flowers, just signatures and silence. As they stepped out into the bright sunlight, Ethan extended his hand. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Cross." Lena hesitated, then shook it. His palm was warm, steady, professional. She had expected arrogance. Instead, there was restraint, almost respect. The car ride to his estate was quiet. Through the tinted window, Lena watched the city fade into rolling hills and manicured lawns. When the gates finally opened, she saw a sprawling mansion of white stone, surrounded by fountains and gardens that seemed too perfect to be real. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and lavender. A housekeeper greeted them, bowing slightly. "Welcome home, Mr. and Mrs. Cross." Lena's stomach tightened. The words sounded too heavy, too final. Ethan gestured toward the grand staircase. "Your room is upstairs. Second door on the right. We start our first public event tomorrow night." She nodded silently and followed the housekeeper up the stairs. Her new room was larger than her entire apartment back in the city. Crystal chandelier balcony, silk curtains swaying in the breeze. It was beautiful and cold like a museum. That night, as she unpacked her small suitcase, she whispered to herself, "What have you done, Lena?" Downstairs, Ethan stood in his study, staring at the signed contract on his desk. For the first time, the victory felt hollow. He had won the bet, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice asked if this was really what he wanted. Outside, the Texas sky turned violet. 2 strangers under the same roof, bound by pride and paper, unaware that the deal they made would soon become something neither of them could control. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Cross estate, illuminating dust motes that drifted lazily in the air. The place was breathtaking, yet Lena still felt like a visitor in someone else's dream. Her first morning as Mrs. Cross began not with flowers or breakfast in bed, but with a list. Ethan's assistant, a sharp woman named Claire, met her at the dining table, holding a sleek tablet. "Mr. Cross has a full schedule this week. There are a few public events you will need to attend with him. Dress fittings are arranged at noon, etiquette session at 2, and a press rehearsal at 4. Any questions?" Lena blinked, still in her simple cardigan. "Press rehearsal," Claire smiled politely. "Yes, Mrs. Cross. You will need to look comfortable beside your husband. People will be watching very closely." When Claire left, Lena looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring, a plain silver band, glimmered under the light. It was not love, she reminded herself. It was business. Upstairs, Ethan finished tying his cufflinks, his reflection sharp against the glass. He had done dozens of deals in his life, but none felt as strange as this. He could control markets, build empires, crush competitors, but he could not predict what to do with the quiet baker who now shared his last name. Their first official appearance came sooner than expected. That evening, a black limousine waited in front of the mansion. Lena stepped out, wearing a navy gown that shimmered under the lights, her hair pinned back with delicate pearls. She looked nervous but radiant. Ethan offered his arm, and for a second she hesitated before taking it. "Just remember," he whispered, "it is all an act." She forced a smile. "I will do my best." Inside the downtown hotel, ballroom chandeliers glowed like captured stars. Reporters lined the red carpet. Ethan posed with the ease of a man who had done this his entire life, while Lena followed his lead, answering polite questions with rehearsed grace. When a journalist asked how they met, Ethan said smoothly, "At a cafe. Pure coincidence. Sometimes, the best things happen when you are not looking for them." Lena turned her head slightly, pretending to laugh. The sound was soft, almost real. Cameras flashed. Halfway through the night, she escaped to the balcony to breathe. The crowd, the noise, the flashes, it all felt unreal. She leaned against the railing, staring at the city lights below. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. "You handled that well," a voice said behind her. She turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened. For once, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man. "I almost tripped twice," she said, half laughing. "Then, you hit it perfectly," he replied. His gaze softened for a moment. "You do not have to try so hard, you know." "I do," she said quietly, "because everyone is waiting for me to fail." Ethan looked at her for a long second. "Not everyone." The silence that followed was gentle, not awkward. The music from inside faded into a distant hum. For the first time, Lena saw something behind his guarded eyes, something human. The next morning, headlines splashed across the financial pages. Ethan Cross's secret bride revealed. Some praised her humility, others mocked her appearance. Social media was crueler. Comments about her weight, her background, her smile flooded every post. Lena sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through them until her chest ached. Ethan walked in, saw her face, and froze. "You should not read that," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes shining with tears. "They think I do not belong next to you." He hesitated, then pulled out the stool beside her. "Let them talk. They do not know you." She laughed bitterly. "Neither do you." Ethan opened his mouth to reply, but his phone buzzed with a call from the boardroom. He looked torn for a second, then stood. "I have to take this." As he walked away, Lena whispered under her breath, "Of course you do." Later that afternoon, Claire found her in the garden trying to compose herself. "Mrs. Cross," she said gently, "the charity gala is tomorrow. It is important. If you want them to stop seeing you as a story, you must give them something else to see." That night, Lena sat by her window, sketching ideas on a notepad. She decided she would attend the gala, not as the woman people mocked, but as the woman her mother raised her, to be strong, kind, unafraid. Downstairs, Ethan looked over the same news articles. The harsh words about Lena cut deeper than he expected. He closed his laptop and stared into the quiet room. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed not of her but of himself. The next evening would test them both. Neither knew that the gala meant to prove their illusion would become the moment their hearts began to change. The night of the charity gala arrived with cold wind and flashing cameras. The event was held in the Grand Dallas Conservatory, a glass building filled with chandeliers and violin music that floated through the air like silk. Ethan stood tall in his black tuxedo, calm as always, while Lena walked beside him in a crimson gown that shimmered like firelight. Every head turned when she entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some smiled politely, others exchanged smirks. Lena felt every stare like a pinprick against her skin, but she lifted her chin and smiled anyway. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Carry yourself with kindness, and no one can take your dignity." When the host invited her to speak about the bakery's small community program, Lena hesitated. Ethan gave her a slight nod. She stepped up to the microphone, her voice trembling at first but gaining strength with every word. I grew up believing success was measured by how much you can give, she said softly. My mother used to bake bread for neighbors who could not afford it. She said, every loaf carries love, and love feeds more than hunger. Tonight, I am proud to honor that same spirit through this foundation. The ballroom grew quiet. Even the people who had whispered cruel things earlier now listened. Ethan watched her, realizing this woman, who had entered his life because of a foolish bet, had more grace than most of the people he had ever known. After the speech, several guests came to shake her hand. Donations poured in for her community bakery project. For the first time since their wedding, Ethan felt proud, genuinely proud to stand beside her. Later that night, as the gala ended, Lena slipped away to the balcony overlooking the city. She leaned on the marble railing, letting the cool breeze wash over her. Her heart was still racing, but for once it was not from fear. Ethan joined her, a soft smile on his lips. You were incredible tonight, he said quietly. She laughed, the sound, light and unguarded. I did not trip once. That is progress, he chuckled. You did more than that. You reminded everyone in that room what heart looks like. Lena glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Thank you, Ethan. I know this whole thing started as a business deal, but tonight felt different. Ethan looked out over the skyline, his expression unreadable. Maybe it is different, he admitted. Maybe I forgot what real looks like. For a long moment they stood there in silence, the city glowing beneath them, the distance between them slowly shrinking. When they returned home, Lena found a small gift box on her nightstand. Inside was a silver charm shaped like a loaf of bread and a handwritten note, for the woman who reminded me that value is not measured in numbers. She traced the words with her fingertips, her chest tightening. It was the first gesture that did not feel like a transaction. Down the hall, Ethan sat in his study staring at the same skyline. He thought about the way Lena had spoken, honest, humble, fearless. He realized he was beginning to care, truly care, and that scared him more than any business risk ever had. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the night sky. Somewhere between contract and connection, a fragile thread of something real had begun to form, something neither of them planned for, but both were starting to feel. The following week passed in a blur of public events and quiet evenings. Something subtle had shifted between them since the gala. Ethan began joining Lena in the kitchen in the mornings, trading his usual protein shakes for her cinnamon rolls. She teased him about not knowing how to crack an egg, and he countered by calling her the most stubborn baker in Texas. One night the power went out during a thunderstorm. The mansion, usually bright and alive with technology, fell into complete darkness. Lena found Ethan in the study, sitting by the window with a flashlight and a bottle of wine. Are you afraid of the dark, mister? Cross, she joked. He smiled faintly. Only when I am alone. She hesitated before sitting across from him. Rain streaked down the tall windows, the storm rumbling above them. For once, there were no contracts, no cameras, no expectations, only two people who had spent too long pretending. Ethan poured her a glass and said quietly, I used to think control was everything. Every decision, every risk, every emotion had to be managed. But lately, I am not sure anymore. Lena looked at him, her expression soft. Maybe control is not what you need. Maybe it is trust. Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them, warm, fragile, real. The storm outside raged, but inside the quiet room time seemed to slow. After that night, Ethan became more open, less guarded. He listened when she talked about her mother, her dreams, and her late father, who used to say, kindness costs nothing, but it changes everything. He began seeing her, not as a contract, but as the mirror that reflected who he wanted to be. A few days later, he invited her to accompany him to a company charity board meeting. You do not have to speak, he said, just observe. But when a senior investor mocked the bakery project as a publicity stunt, Lena could not stay silent. With all due respect, she said calmly, what matters is not how the story looks on paper, but how many lives it touches. You cannot measure compassion with profit margins. The room fell silent. Ethan looked at her, pride flickering in his eyes. When the meeting ended, he whispered, You have more courage than most people I know. That evening, they shared a quiet dinner on the terrace. The air smelled of rain and rosemary. Lena laughed when Ethan tried to help her set the table and nearly broke a glass. You know, she said, for a man who runs a billion-dollar company, you are terrible at folding napkins. He grinned. I never had a reason to learn. Until now. The laughter lingered soft and genuine. It was not the sound of two strangers bound by paper anymore. It was the sound of two hearts finding rhythm. But just as the walls between them began to fall, the world outside started to close in. A message arrived late that night, an anonymous email sent to multiple media outlets. It contained photos of the original contract signatures, visible the title Clear Marriage Agreement between Ethan Cross and Lena Morales. Ethan stared at the screen, the color draining from his face. He knew exactly who had leaked it. His rival, the same man who had made that cruel bet months ago. In one click, the secret that bound them would become the scandal that could destroy them. Down the hall, unaware of what had happened, Lena hummed softly while closing her window against the rain. For the first time since their wedding, she felt at peace. She had no idea that by morning, the world would know the truth, and her heart would be the one left to pay the price. The news broke before sunrise. Headlines screamed across every major outlet. Billionaire Ethan Cross exposed marriage was a contract. By 8 in the morning, reporters surrounded the gates of the estate, cameras flashing, microphones waving through the bars. Lena stood in the kitchen, her phone buzzing non-stop. Every call, every message was the same: shock, betrayal, pity. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the online articles. There it was, in bold letters, the scanned image of their signed contract. Her name, her signature, the date. Everything. When Ethan entered the room, she turned toward him, her face pale. "Tell me this is not real," she whispered. He did not answer. His silence told her everything. Lena's voice cracked. "How could you let this happen? Was it all just a bet?" After all, Ethan took a step closer. "Lena, please listen to me. It was a mistake, a stupid game that got out of hand. But it stopped being a game the day I met you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You should have told me the truth. You had every chance." "I wanted to," he said, his voice breaking for the first time. "But I was afraid that if you knew, you would walk away. And I could not lose you." She stared at him, torn between anger and heartbreak. "You never had me, Ethan. Not really." She left the kitchen before he could stop her, the sound of her footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Minutes later, the front doors slammed shut, and the mansion that once felt too big suddenly felt even emptier. By noon, the story had gone viral. Talk shows mocked their fake love story. Online commenters tore her apart, calling her a gold digger, a liar, a fraud. The same people who had praised her speech at the gala now laughed at her pain. Ethan canceled his meetings and spent the day on the phone with his lawyers trying to trace the leak. But every word of legal strategy felt hollow. No lawsuit could fix what had already been broken. That evening, he drove to Lena's bakery. Through the glass, he saw her sitting at one of the tables, staring at nothing. The charm he had given her, the tiny silver loaf of bread, rested beside an open newspaper. He stepped inside quietly. "Lena," he said softly. She did not look up. "You should not be here." "I just need to say this," he said. "I was a coward. I made that bet to prove a point. But what I found was something real. I love you, Lena. I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I need you to hear that." Her eyes lifted to his, full of hurt and disbelief. Love built on a lie is not love, Ethan. It is performance." He flinched at her words but nodded slowly. "You are right, and I am done performing." For a moment, they stood in silence as the city lights flickered through the window. Then Lena whispered, "Please leave." Ethan opened his mouth but closed it again. There was nothing left to say. He placed a folded envelope on the counter, the deed to her bakery transferred fully to her name. Then he walked out into the rain without another word. Lena watched him go, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She wanted to hate him, but her heart refused. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her chest, loud, chaotic, and impossible to control. When the door finally closed behind him, she whispered to the empty room, "Why does love always come when it is too late?" Outside, Ethan stood by his car, drenched, staring up at the dark sky. The man who had once thought he could buy anything now realized there was one thing money could never fix: a broken heart. Days turned into weeks, and the scandal only grew louder. The headlines faded, but the damage lingered like a scar that refused to heal. Lena threw herself into rebuilding the bakery, determined to keep her promise to her late mother. Every morning she opened before dawn, kneading dough until her hands ached. Customers trickled in, some whispering, some avoiding her altogether. Still, she smiled through it all. Ethan, meanwhile, vanished from the public eye. The board forced him to take a leave of absence, and his reputation as a ruthless but brilliant businessman crumbled overnight. Alone in his penthouse, he watched news clips replay the moment his marriage contract hit the internet. Every time Lena's face appeared on the screen, he felt another crack in his chest. He tried calling her several times, but she never answered. He sent letters that came back unopened. Eventually, he stopped trying. Instead, he focused on fixing what he could control, investigating the leak that had destroyed them both. Late one night, his private investigator called. "We found it," the man said. "The leak came from inside your company. One of your partners sold the documents to a tabloid." Ethan's voice was cold. "Who?" "Marcus Reed," the investigator replied. "The same man who made that bet with you at the beginning." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The memory of that night came back, the laughter, the whiskey, the arrogance. Marcus had been the loudest one in the room, pushing him to prove himself. And now Marcus had cashed in on his humiliation. The next morning, Ethan went to the company headquarters. The board meeting froze when he entered, drenched from the rain but calm. Marcus smirked from across the table. "Well, look who finally decided to show up." Ethan set a folder on the table and pushed it toward him. "Your game is over." Inside were bank statements, signed contracts, and proof of the payment Marcus had received from the tabloid. The room went silent. Within hours, Marcus was escorted out of the building by security. Ethan could have pressed charges, but he did not. He no longer wanted revenge, he wanted redemption. That evening, Ethan drove to the bakery again. The lights were on this time, the smell of cinnamon drifting into the street. Through the window, he saw Lena laughing softly with a young boy as she handed him a warm pastry. Her smile still had the same quiet strength that had disarmed him months ago. He hesitated at the door, then stepped inside. The bell above the frame jingled softly. Lena turned, surprise flashing in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I came to tell you the truth," he said. "Marcus Reed leaked the contract. I confronted him today. He is gone. I should have protected you, Lena, not my pride." She looked down at the counter, her voice steady but distant. "It does not change what happened." "I know," he admitted, "but I am not here to fix the past. I just wanted to take responsibility for it." Silence filled the room. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the faint hum of the city. Lena studied him for a long time, then said quietly, "You should go, Ethan. This place is finally starting to feel like peace again." He nodded, understanding. "If peace is what you have found, then I will not take it from you." Before he left, he placed a small white envelope on the counter. "This is the funding for your community kitchen. It is yours now, no contracts, no conditions." Lena's breath caught, but she said nothing. Ethan gave her one last look, then turned and walked out into the soft evening light. For the first time in years, he did not feel like a businessman or a billionaire. He felt like a man learning to live with the consequences of his choices. As the door closed behind him, Lena touched the envelope, her heart torn between forgiveness and fear. She did not know yet that this moment, the quiet after the storm, was only the beginning of something neither of them could let go of forever. 2 months later, spring came to Dallas. The city bloomed again, but Lena's heart still felt caught between winter and something new. The bakery had found its rhythm back. Customers lined up for her cinnamon rolls, and the community kitchen she opened in the back fed dozens of families each week. On the surface, everything looked healed. Yet, every night when she locked the door and turned off the lights, a quiet ache lingered where Ethan's memory still lived. One Saturday morning, she was restocking shelves when Mia rushed in holding a newspaper. "Lena, have you seen this?" The front page showed Ethan standing at a press conference surrounded by cameras. The headline read, "Ethan Cross donates his fortune to launch Hearts in Action Foundation." Mia read the quote aloud. He said, "The greatest return on investment is kindness. I learned that from someone who believed love could feed the world." Lena froze. Her throat tightened, but she said nothing. That night, the foundation's official video appeared online. It showed volunteers distributing food, renovating small bakeries, and supporting single parents who ran family-owned shops. At the end of the clip, Ethan stood in front of a brick building. Behind him, painted in soft gold letters, were the words, "Lena's Kitchen, Partner Site." He looked straight into the camera. "To the person who taught me that compassion is not weakness but courage, thank you." Tears slipped down Lena's cheeks. She turned off the video and stared at the silver charm on her bracelet, the tiny loaf of bread he had once given her. Without realizing it, her fingers tightened around it. 3 days later, she received an invitation printed on heavy cream paper. Hearts in Action Gala, benefiting community bakers of Texas. The signature at the bottom read, Ethan Cross founder. Mia urged her to go. "You owe it to yourself to hear what he has to say." That Friday evening, Lena walked into the ballroom of the same hotel where everything had once begun. The lights were warm, this time, not blinding. The crowd turned as she entered, whispering her name with something new respect. Ethan stood at the stage mid-speech when he saw her. For a second, his words caught in his throat. Then he smiled, genuine and steady. "And tonight," he said, "I want to thank the person who reminded me that redemption is not found in power but in humility." Applause filled the room. When the speech ended, Ethan stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. "Lena," he said softly. She met his gaze. "You did not have to do all of this." He shook his head. "I wanted to. I hurt you, and no apology could fix that. But I needed to become someone who deserved the way you once looked at me." Her eyes glistened. "You already had that chance, Ethan." He smiled sadly. "Then let me earn another." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was the same silver charm she had kept, but this one had a heart engraved beside the loaf of bread. "I do not expect forgiveness," he said quietly. "I only want you to know that every good thing I build from now on will carry your name in it." Lena's heart ached as she looked at him. The crowd around them blurred, fading into soft light. She took a breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not know if I can forget Ethan, but I believe people can change." He nodded, emotion thick in his voice. "Then maybe that is enough for a new beginning." As the orchestra began to play, Ethan extended his hand. For a long second, she hesitated, then took it. The applause swelled, not for the foundation or the billionaire, but for two hearts that had finally chosen grace over pride. And somewhere deep inside, Lena knew that forgiveness was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of something real. 6 months later, the morning sun washed over the quiet Dallas suburbs, spilling golden light across the windows of a new cafe. A fresh sign hung above the door, "Lena's Bread and Bloom." The words were painted in soft cream, with a small silver heart beside the name. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and fresh pastries filled the air. Customers chatted softly, children laughed near the counter, and the place pulsed with warmth. Behind the counter, Lena arranged a tray of croissants while humming under her breath. Her hair was tied back with a red ribbon, and flour dusted her hands. She looked up when the bell above the door rang. Ethan stepped inside, holding a bouquet of white tulips. His suit was simple, no tie, no bodyguards, just a man who had learned to walk without the weight of his title. He smiled when their eyes met. "You finally opened it," he said softly. She nodded, her voice calm but bright. "The foundation helped with the space. I wanted it to feel like home for everyone who walks in." He handed her the flowers. "Then it is already perfect." For a moment, silence hung between them, comfortable this time, not strained. The tension that once defined them had faded into something gentler, deeper. Ethan glanced around the cafe. "You know, every time I pass by there is a line out the door. You have built something beautiful, Lena." She smiled. "It is not just me. It is the community. People needed a place to belong." He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "So did I." Their eyes held for a long moment, filled with all the things words could not carry: regret, forgiveness, and the quiet understanding that love, real love, was never perfect, but always worth the risk. Outside, the late summer breeze brushed through the open windows, carrying laughter and music from the nearby market. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I have had this for months," he said, his voice steady but low. "I was waiting until it felt right. Until I felt right." Lena froze as he opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, delicate and timeless. "I once asked you to marry me for all the wrong reasons," he said. This time, I am asking for the only reason that matters. Not to prove anything, not to win anything, but because every day, without you, has been missing its meaning. The cafe had gone quiet. The customers nearby stopped to watch, smiles spreading as the moment unfolded. Lena looked at the ring, then at Ethan, no longer the billionaire who made bets with hearts, but the man who had learned to love without conditions. She took a deep breath, tears glimmering at the corner of her eyes. "Ethan Cross," she whispered, "I never wanted your money or your power. I just wanted you to be honest." He nodded. "Then I promise you, honesty is all I have left to give." Her lips trembled into a smile as she held out her hand. "Then yes." The room erupted in gentle applause. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands shaking slightly, his smile breaking into relief and joy. Lena laughed through her tears, the sound bright and full. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, they stood outside the cafe, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and staff. The new sign glowed softly behind them, "Bread and Bloom." Ethan wrapped his arm around her and whispered, "You know, I used to think success was about owning the world, but now it is about finding the one place you never want to leave." Lena leaned against him, her voice tender. "Then welcome home." As the sky turned gold and the first stars appeared, the camera would have pulled back to show them standing hand in hand, laughter mingling with the sound of the wind. Their story had begun with a bet, but it ended with something real, something no contract could ever define. The best kind of love story, the one they never planned,